Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Policy Committee meeting of October what is the date? October the 9th, October the 9th, 2024. Happy to have everyone here. I'd like to begin by stating that we are happy and pleased to acknowledge that we are privileged to be meeting on the unceded and the ancestral territories of the Squamish and the St'át'imc nations. We have an agenda recommendation. Is there someone prepared to make that recommendation?
That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
Thank you, Melissa. And a seconder for that? Thank you, Rachel. And some minutes. We do have some minutes that need to be recommended.
That the minutes of the policy committee meeting held on September 11th, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you so much. Melissa, that's great. And a seconder for that? Thank you, Rachel. Terrific. We'll move into our information items, and we might leave item B, leave for public office, just for a bit in our agenda, as Rebecca needs just a little bit of time to get ready, and we'll just play it a little bit by ear if that's okay with everyone, and then be sure to get to that item when appropriate. So let's begin with the information item 5A, the policy review schedule, and I'll turn that over to Danielle.
Hi, everyone. So this is the same schedule as before. There was no changes made to it from the last version. So there's really no update there, but it's just there for your reference.
Terrific. Thank you so much. We'll, as mentioned, skip over item 5B for the time being, and we'll address our discussion items, beginning with 6A, the policy number 107, anti-racism. And I'll turn that over to Superintendent Nicholson.
Thank you very much. I guess I'll start by saying I recognize some substantive change or lots of edits to the original policy. So we had put this out for public input. We got some feedback from the public. So thank you for those of you that responded. And one of the things we noted and felt that it was an important note was a comment questions around who this specific policy would be aimed at.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have specific policies already about discrimination, harassment, respectful workplace that does apply to all members of the community, including parents, visitors to our buildings, etc. And that in order to ensure this was a policy that we could work to stand behind, and that the district would be able to implement as fulsomely as possible, that really this is should be about the conduct of all employees in the district, including contractors.
I'm in a meeting too. It should be 15 minutes. Okay.
That we bring into our district. So when you look at the revised policy, you'll see that's a main change you made to us. This is really about how we as a system, how the board and the district would like to conduct themselves in the work that we do, so that when we have things that we move forward, like standing up for to be an anti-racist, to not be a bystander, but to seek to learn, to teach, to provide that good example for our kids, it actually means it's us, the adults in the building that need to have this integrity. And when we speak about professional learning opportunities, of course, that also means staff. While there will be opportunities, I'm sure, to provide more information for the public, again, focusing on all the staff across our sites is really a strong governance piece from the board. Hence the change in focus, and also a real recognition that we should provide some attempted definitions in by what we mean by these terms, so that it's not confusing and clear. So that's what I would like to open with, to redefine, put our definitions clear about what racism, what anti-racism, what equity is and isn't, and to again focus on those staff responsibilities. And in general, the five main focuses for staff is around, will promote collectively inclusion and equity, that we are committed to participate in ongoing professional development, we'll take action against racism, that we want to engage in cross-cultural learning and fostering those safe spaces in our classrooms and in our sites, and that equity-based education will be integrated to curriculum. That's already a part of the DC curriculum, but this is a recognition and a sort of a recommitment
Mhm.
to those ideals. And I think, and we've also made emphasis on that training and support. We recognize the importance of providing those opportunities for our folks. We have fantastic people in our district, and many of them are already champions of anti-racism equity. And we recognize that ongoing support in this area is nonetheless appreciated, because after all, we all see ourselves as lifelong learners. And then we also did a stronger emphasis on reporting and accountability mechanisms, that we're stating, that we actually have already established procedures if incidences of real or perceived racism are brought forward. So, again, I'm hopeful that this provides more clarity. It actually provides a roadmap for the district to actually implement. Well, of course, we support the belief and the hope that all of us engage in anti-racism work across this district, regardless of whether you're employed or not. We know that this needs to particularly focus on our actions as staff, and we can hold our other folks accountable to these things through respectful workplace and our current discrimination, harassment policy. In a nutshell.
Thanks so much, Chris. I'll open it up to discussion. Maybe I'll jump in and start. The first thing that really jumped out to me that I really thought was helpful for people were the definitions. I was really pleased to see that. I think that there's sometimes not a lot of great understanding of what is anti-racism and what that means. And I think this policy really helps draw focus to that. And I think that that's really imperative to this whole policy. So I'm pretty pleased with it myself. Anyone else? Mm-hmm.
More clear. Like that it's got the bigger terms and the less negative terms.
Anything else? Yeah, I think this is looking like really complete work. People seem quite satisfied.
Yeah.
Do you need us to make a motion to have this go to the board meeting tonight to be adopted? Okay.
Recommendation.
I think we'll wait till we review this other one. We might do them together.
Do them together?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's do that then. Are there any other comments?
That was great.
Okay, I don't see anything from those joining online. So I think I'm feeling comfortable to move on to the next item. Okay, let's move on to policy 108, accessibility. And Superintendent Nicholson, that's you again.
Yeah, okay, so again, some meaningful feedback from the consultation process. Again, we approach this in the same way in terms of providing, again, expanded definitions and some terms for help. So I think just explaining what we mean by ableism, the term neurotypical is used a lot. We know there's lots of edu-speak, and I think it's important where we can to define those for the public. So I'm hopeful again, we're hopeful that it provides a more comprehensive understanding of the terms and the why behind it. Another change was just sort of refining disability descriptions. And there was some feedback around what invisible meant or didn't mean. So again, wanting to clarify that, and that folks can also experience barriers for temporary disability. So when we think about accessible buildings, someone's broken a leg or both legs and they're in a wheelchair. We don't have ramps to schools or lever doors and things like that for accessibility. It obviously is a barrier. So I think recognizing disability is can both be permanent and temporary is important. And then we realized we didn't actually explicitly mention equity. So again, by defining the term, it just helps reinforce our other policies, right? Of what we mean by equity, after all, it's kind of our enduring understanding. So anytime we can again recommit and clarify what we mean by equity, I think that's important. And then the other changes were just more collaborations on things like quality of opportunity, reaffirmed commitment to principles of universal design, as I mentioned earlier, and these rights. We wanted to ensure the old policy mentioned the accessibility plan being posted on the website, but we didn't provide much detail that not only is a requirement, but we wanted to put the tool in there as well, because again, it's meant to be a living accessibility plan as a living document. And then again, in general, just a stronger focus on anti-ableism, equity, inclusivity, the new definitions, and just a little more heft to the policy for clarity. So I'm hopeful that it provides a more comprehensive framework, and that again, the clarity of language is there, and we like how it echoes other policies moving forward, and probably something that we bring back when we look at some of our other foundational policies in terms of definitions section, because I think consistency of communication and clarity, whatnot, we know that's so important.
Thank you. So thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Melissa.
I also like how this one is broken down the same as the anti-racism. I do have concerns about the neurotypical part. Are we going into somewhere where we're putting lists that are not complete, where someone might have something to say, where it's used to describe students who do not have conditions such as autism, ADHD, or other neurodiverse diagnoses? I worry the same conversation we had last board meeting where you get into trouble with lists. Is there another way that we can write that without putting examples in there, but having it be?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So when it's a list with a colon, that's of a concern. Common practice is such as to be that caveat disclaimer that I'm only providing a partial list. However, if that's a shared concern of the board, we don't necessarily have to provide any examples. We can just speak to the sentence without the two examples.
Yeah, I just feel like we are getting
Yep.
into a place where we are steering away from such as situations in life. That's just how I look. If anyone else has anything to say.
Open it up to my colleagues.
You know, it just came to my mind. So if it doesn't seem like this is an appropriate response, then that's perfectly okay. But when we're defining new terms to the public, I wonder if it is helpful to add a such as clause for maybe people who English is not their first language or are new to the culture. And that might help give more context. Like I completely agree with your idea about the lists, but then in thinking about people who are in other situations where, maybe, go ahead,
Is it
Chris.
included,
Yeah.
But not limited to? Is that
Maybe.
helpful, or is that the same concern?
Yeah.
Is there
I-
more that we could add?
Mm.
We can
I
think off the
don't
top.
think we need to add more, because if you're adding more, then you're adding less.
Right.
Mhm.
You're excluding these guys.
I
So-
like that it's pointing out
Yeah,
certain things, but I agree.
it's
It's
kind
a-
of, it's tricky. Like
Yeah,
I
it is tricky,
appreciate such
yeah.
as, especially if you don't understand what neurotypical
Mhm.
is.
Yeah,
Then I
exactly.
appreciate, oh yeah, they mean this, but at the same time, why aren't they, like, do
Mhm.
these guys count too?
Mhm.
I don't know.
I'll go back to my suggestion, is changing such as to included but not limited to acceptable.
It's more specific.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It is more specific than such as.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'd
think it
be
would be
happy with
better.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And if anyone needed more information? No, never mind.
We would hope that if we.
They would
are
reach out.
communicating,
Mhm.
if they have
Yeah.
questions, then absolutely.
Yeah.
Bring it to them.
I answered
Like
that
with the
as I
list.
said it in my head, yeah.
And I mean, you do say other,
Yeah,
So
it does
it's-
say.
kind
Yeah.
of the catch-all.
Mhm.
All right. Any other comments on that? I might. Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
April.
I'm really, again, appreciative of the
Yeah.
definitions. I think it's
Mhm.
really timely for us to be very specific what we mean by both anti-racism and accessibility. I think it's super important. I love the term, like you struggle with these concepts as you go along, and the term barrier has really opened up a lot of thinking for myself, like that one single word. It's just such a powerful term, and I'm glad to see that it's in, I think it was in the other document, the anti-racism document too. It's a great word because people really understand, oh, right, I don't have that barrier,
Mhm.
but you do.
Mhm.
So what can we make it so that we're equal by not having, like, it's such a great word. Use it over and over.
Thank you for that, April. I'm just curious about the feedback tool. Can you give just a brief description of what that feedback tool is?
Yeah, so I know we did, present that at an earlier board meeting, so I will be brief, and we did share
Yeah.
that with the public as well. It currently exists right on our, website.
Okay.
So the feedback tool is a requirement of
Yeah.
new legislation around accessibility. And it provides, any member of the public to click on the tool and to share, it basically, what was the barrier?
I remember.
Where was it? And, right, so
Yeah.
it's just to, really get a sense of, okay, here's some of the work, we need to do.
Okay.
Again, the tool isn't meant to be, prescriptive. It's not saying that, organizations are now responsible to do X. It's that notion of that awareness piece, and where we can address it in a timely manner, we will. Sometimes it'll be something that's staged over time because of costs. For example, in a school district such as ours, which hasn't had ministry funding for new builds for a very long time, we still have many of our buildings with door handles that are the round knobs. And we know in all new builds, through the principles of universal design, they're levers, because that's obviously much more accessible.
Mhm.
While of course, as a district, we would love to change out all of the doors across the district to be levers. The cost of doing that and its impact on operations
Mhm.
and all the other things we want to ensure that we're providing for kids is a deterrent at this time. But what we'll be doing, because we do a yearly review of the feedback as well, is to bring some of those things forward to the board when we speak about things like what are we doing around our AFG or other funding sources, and then we'll have some accessibility recommendations for the board to consider next budget cycle. If things are about student access, however, we do try to address those right away. So if we know a student is moving to our district with an accessibility need, and there is a need for an additional ramp or X, Y, and Z, we work to address that, because again, we want to remove the barriers to education.
Okay, I do, actually, when you describe it, I begin to recall. And then is it worthwhile linking that tool in the policy? So if you're in the policy, you can just click and then
Yes.
link it straight to, yeah, okay.
Double check. I should. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
yeah, no, easy peasy. And then Celeste, I see you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so very sorry. We just had an internet crisis that was solved in time for me to. I was listening to the conversation through dial-in. I just wasn't able to talk. So the question that I had was somewhat related to Melissa's question, and it's just around definitions in both of the policies. So are these, and apologies if I missed this, Chris, your mic is a bit, it's a bit more muffled, so I can hear other people very loud and clear. But then yours is just a tiny bit quieter. And so I have to turn the volume up and down. And so for people on YouTube, that might be challenging. So
Thank
if
you.
I
I
missed
think it was
something,
important to address the people in the room. That's my mistake. I'll lift it up. Hey, teacher, thank you for that.
no problem. If I missed something because of that, I apologize. My question regarding the definitions is, are these definitions that we have developed ourselves? And if the answer to that is yes, I wonder if it is risky in doing that, and if we might not point to definitions that already exist in law or things like that.
Yeah, so these are amalgamated definitions, you know, from various sources, because yeah, language is always changing. So we wanted to ensure that it was that the clarity was there. I could certainly look to the Ministry of Education and provide that definition if that's helpful.
What I'm getting at is the language changing piece. So because we don't change these policies very often, and we don't necessarily even review them very often, I wonder if it's problematic to have definitions included in these documents rather than pointing to definitions within policy or law that may be updated in a more timely manner. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, it's just a consideration.
Yeah, I don't believe racism, anti-racism is even in different judgments and whatnot would probably be defined differently depending on who's doing the writing and sources being cited. If you're looking for or to consider one definition source, my recommendation would be it should be the Ministry of Education, only because the board is co-governing with the ministry, so that might make it simpler. Although I can tell you, on that note, in the resources that the Ministry of Education provides, so we have an anti-racism toolkit for teachers. The term is there are different words used to describe the term. So I don't know that there's one definition that's the gold standard. I think, again, it's either allow for fluidity and housekeeping changes to make those changes, or we can cite a source from the ministry. I don't know that the ministry is always the most comprehensive one, because they have their own, I'm sure, potentially have concerns about limiting language, which is actually your point as well. So.
April, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I would preference to leave the definitions on the page. And then if you wanted to reference or put a link in addition to that, that would go to the Ministry of Education. I, for one, if I was looking at this policy as a parent or whatever, I would have a better tendency to read the definitions if they were on the policy than go to a link.
Yeah.
So I think that
agree.
if you want to add the link to, to sort of give it credibility, if that's what we're looking for, then you can, there's nothing stopping us from adding it like the way you would reference a research paper at the bottom.
I'll just share, I jumped on the ministry. So the ministry, actually, anti-racism definition as updated May 7, 2004. It simply says anti-racism is the deliberate act of opposing racism and promoting a society that is thoughtful, inclusive, and just. My issue with that one, of course, is that's super broad, and that you can insert the word equity or insert the word
That's the issue, yeah. It's to apply
anti-homophobia
to
there.
us.
So I don't know if that's deliberate or not. I actually like this definition better. This is the policy. I think it's clearer. But again, I'm not opposed to linking as well to the ministry. That's helpful. Equity is defined as something is fair and just for everybody. It may refer to many things, including programs, services, and society as a whole. And again, I don't feel that's as comprehensive as 1.3's definition.
I really like your definition.
Is there any objection to putting the link in?
No, I think that's helpful.
Covers all of them.
Yeah.
I'll
Covers all
do that.
bases.
Ministry definitions of
Yeah.
terms, please link here.
There you go.
There we are.
Yeah.
That satisfactory, Celeste?
Yeah, I don't even think it's necessary. I'm just like raising this as a point of discussion. I don't think that it's necessarily wrong to have our own definitions, and this is, you know, stating that this is how we are going to conduct business within this organization. Just to say out loud, another way to do it might be to provide reference to standard definitions that exist within the law. As Chris has stated, the last time it was changed on the ministry website was in 2004. It's unlikely to change. We review these policies on like a 3 or 4 year cycle, whatever it is. You know, we'll come back around to this one in another 3 years and it can be updated. But specifically to the accessibility policy, you know, if we're creating these definitions that are lengthy, Melissa has raised one concern, you know, really giving thought to what it is we're putting on paper. If we're creating definitions that are somewhat novel to some degree, you know, and maybe she's right. Maybe it doesn't need to have a list of that includes such as, maybe you could say diagnosable conditions, but I mean, what is neurotypical anyway? Like, I don't know.
I think I like the idea that we came up with for addressing this such as clause. And I think we decided inclusive but not limited to,
Yeah.
or some sort of language like that. So I think that seems helpful. That might have been a bit of a tricky part, Celeste, when you were just coming in on the phone. I'm not sure if you heard that.
Yeah, I was having difficulty hearing what you were saying. I was listening to most of the conversation, but I couldn't catch everything.
Yeah. So that was discussed for that one. And I think, does that sit well with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, has this gone out for this actual, these words on paper? Has this gone out for input yet, or is that coming next?
They weren't presented in a list. They were used absolutely in the previous policies, and the feedback was from folks. How are you defining ableism? How are you defining neurotypical? So that was the impetus to provide a bit of a overview of the terms. So it was in response to feedback.
All right, and then you're gonna see, you know, when are we planning to, maybe another plan for these ones is to say, we look at how it's working and review it again on a shorter cycle than we would have otherwise.
Yeah, again, if things come up that are emergent and it's we actually have that in policy, we can do that if it's that egregious. If not, we tend to.
I think we might find that having that feedback tool will probably be what will tell us if we need to look at the policy right away.
Yeah.
Because as Chris said, if something egregious shows up through the feedback tool or other things, then of course we would make adjustments quite quickly, I'm sure. All right, any further discussion on the accessibility policy? All right, seeing
Are we looking for a motion?
none, yep, seeing none, I think, yeah, so now I think we need a motion to bring these to our open board meeting. And is there anyone prepared to make that motion?
Will someone insert something?
Give a moment.
Waiting for the insert.
A draft motion will be created, and then once that's ready for us, we can have someone move that motion.
Working for that, but not for you.
First, you want me to do it? Oh, okay.
The policy committee recommend the Board of Education adopt policy 107 anti-racism and policy 108 accessibility with changes as discussed.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, and April for seconding. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor? And any opposed? All right, seeing none, that motion is passed. Thank you so much. We will now just scroll back to information items. We'll go to number 5B, and that is the leave for public office. And I'll turn that over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Celeste, I don't think you had joined us by then. My laptop decided to update and such, so we just moved that until I was ready. We've had this discussion in the past, and I think we left it last in May, or something like that, which is where I was gonna talk to, BCSTA, which I did. And plus we had staff do a little more, investigation into this, and everything seems to come back to, it's a bargaining piece in the collective agreement. And, that brings it forward, and they're not part of the board policies in general, those who would actually have something in place. Some have been repealed since, and then others are their administrative policies. So anything that I've looked into seems to indicate that they did not part of the work of the board. But open to discussion, open to a motion if we want to continue down this path.
I do have one comment.
Yep.
And I actually discovered this the other day when I was looking to do something else, and I'm just gonna find it. What I noted in the school act for trustees in terms of requirements for attendance at meetings, etc., was something we've applied before. If it's illness, it's after 3 months. But what it does say is it's a board for other leaves. I don't know if that applies or not, but it's a board decision. And what I would say is that is contained within, that current board. So that would make me believe that for a board member, if a board member wanted to run for office, they could bring that to the board. The board would determine whether they felt that was an appropriate leave or not, but it would be a board decision. I just wanted to bring in the trustee part, because we're talking about staff. I wanted to just share that I did some research on the trustee part and believe that in the school act is where that would fall. I mean, what I've seen in the past, obviously, is folks leave their trusteeship to take on another role to run. But again, that could be a board decision, because my guess would be that would be longer than, right, the 3 month term of the campaign. So I just want to throw that into the mix, because I wanted to make sure that we were talking about all folks in the district, including trustees. Just information.
Thank you for that, Chris. Any other comments?
Celeste.
Oh, go ahead, Celeste.
Yeah, so I haven't heard any evidence to suggest that this can only be discussed within the context of collective bargaining. I'm not only talking about unionized employees taking leave, I'm talking about everyone. And my advocacy is to open the door for any employee to consider taking a leave from their employment to engage in public service through running for office in one capacity or another. I have, through the research that I've done, I haven't seen anything that says that it cannot be done through policy. It is the will of the board. If the board is interested in supporting their employees and taking leave to run for public office, I think that this is a great way to indicate that publicly. And so I think it would be nice if my fellow trustees were willing to consider this, but I haven't heard anything that indicates that anyone else is in support of it.
Would a next step be then to pass, present a motion, Celeste, to see if we want to direct staff to explore this further? And then you can see how, if the board is in support or not.
Yeah, I mean, I can make a motion if you want me to.
I'm just a suggestion, because we keep coming back around to it, and you're assuming that, or you don't feel like you're getting much support from the rest of the board. So that might be a way to draw that out.
Okay, I move that draft policy be developed for further discussion in policy committee regarding leave for public office for any employee.
You need a second.
Sure. I was just gonna give Danielle a second. I think she's making a little note, or maybe are she?
Or share you noting that too?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just give a second for that to show up, and then we'll look for a seconder. I can see Archie's fingers typing quickly. Okay. Terrific. Thank you so much for doing that, Archie. The recommendation is there. Is there anyone ready to second that recommendation? Okay, Melissa, thank you so much. And we'll move to any further discussion.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there any way that that making this policy could look negative on the board?
Okay, go ahead, April, and then I have a comment.
Okay, I'm going to speak from the collective agreement side, and I will continue to believe that this should be left to the unionized people and the collective agreement process. So in answer to your question, Melissa, that would be my only comment, that it could look like we're overstepping the collective agreement, which would be my opposition.
Yeah, I don't, feel free to jump in, so I don't believe that's what they're asking, because if that agreement does trump the board in terms of legally. So I think Celeste's request though was exempt staff, which isn't governed by.
No.
No, she didn't
it's
ask
also
for,
teaching.
Oh,
she asked
sorry,
for
I thought
any
that's what-
staff.
Oh, any staff.
Any staff.
staff.
They're
For any
speaking on
staff.
your behalf, Celeste.
So what the collective agreement allows for, anything that is written in the collective agreement must be so. Anything that is not written in the collective agreement is going to fall under, management rights. Policy can also dictate what happens with employees. And so what I'm talking about is, what do we value here, people? Do we value people taking time to run for public office? Do we think that it's important that people who are capable and represent diverse corners of all of our communities, such as people who have a lot of knowledge about public education, may be taking a leave from their full-time jobs and serving in the federal or provincial governments to have an impact on policy at that level that might one day actually better support public education? Like, if that is important to us, then we should seriously consider creating policy that is you're not gonna destroy anything with respect to the collective agreement. It just is, those are what they are. But we can have policy that opens the door, and it's not a carte blanche policy that I'm suggesting that anybody can have a leave whenever they want. It's that a leave may be considered within the context of the operational needs. It would still be at the discretion of the organization to allow the leave or not. It's just opening the door for a discussion for people to even think they have a chance to talk about it. That's what I'm talking about. Create a policy that says you can ask, and maybe you will get a yes, but you can ask. And most people, there are so many barriers to running in public office, they're not even going to think to ask. And that's all I'm proposing here, guys. This is not difficult.
If I can just jump in, and then we'll go to April and then Melissa. I feel like we do have people who are well-versed in advocacy who sit on the executive of the BCSTA. They have direct links to ministers already established. Those connections are already there. And I think those are the people who our system has relied upon heavily to do the advocacy right now. And I think that our mandate is education. And as much as I would like to expand opportunities to people for a variety of things, our number one goal is to promote public education and create educated citizens for our community and greater than there. And if we're allowing the people who do that work to leave their jobs, it very well could be as valuable as Celeste is saying, that perhaps these people are tremendous advocates, but I think we already have a system that has those advocates in place. And now we need those tremendously well-educated and well-versed people to run our system. I'll turn it over to April.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to run a scenario here. So let's pretend we put this in policy. And now it's not in collective agreement. So now we have a teacher who comes and asks for a leave of absence. How is David going to handle that? Right? Because he's going to point to the collective agreement and he's going to say, sorry, the leave of absence, there is no leave of absence in our collective agreement to allow you to do this. And then the teacher's going to say, yes, but your board policy says you can do this. And so now we are creating an internal strife, I think. Am I wrong?
So again, board policy cannot.
I know that, but
So there is, we would simply, that would be the response.
exactly.
So the board could
what's the point?
still, but if the board determines they want to support Celeste's motion and they're making the statement, the board can make that statement. It's just an empty policy when it applies to unionized staff where this is covered by that. That's.
It's an empty policy that could create uncomfortable situations.
So what I suggest, because there's a motion, there's been no seconder, then there's been no discussion.
Oh, we had a second and
Sorry.
one more person for discussion. Yeah,
I'm trying to follow.
that's okay. Yeah, we had a second, one more person for discussion, and that's Melissa. So we'll turn it to Melissa now.
So my question was sort of asked by April. I'm wondering if it's going to be a empty policy, is it worth the time of having the staff do this? Is this out of our scope? And who would they be asking for permission? Would it be the board or would it be HR?
Cross-country, please meet with.
Or would it be-
rest of the school. Thank you.
Like who? Celeste, do you have?
Yeah, it would be the superintendent. So I sent out a draft, or it was, I think it was an admin procedure from another school district that or has already doing this. And
Yeah.
so it would have to go to the superintendent, the CEO, whatever. Like, it's not an empty policy. This is about talking about what our values are. And for the record, things can exist in policy without being written into a collective agreement, and the world does not end. People like Dave figure it out. That is what they are paid to do. It is not that hard.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. I think that we should call the question. All in favor of the motion that reads that a draft policy be developed by the policy committee in regards to employee leaves for serving public office. All in favor? Okay, I see 2 and opposed. And 4, so that motion is not carried. And we'll do we have to say anything else besides that? We often don't not pass motions. So the motion has just been defeated. Okay, thank you so much. We'll move on to questions of clarification from the public.
There are no questions.
All right, seeing that there are no questions from the public and that all of the business of this meeting has been completed, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and we can log out of this meeting and we will.
Here until 12:35. Oh, am I wrong?
Yeah. Super sure.
Yep.